we going to talk about today, Mark?
So, disruptive brands, and are they and do they still break the mold? Is where we're sort of venturing into. What do you say about that, Liz?
I love this topic because I was always about brave brands change the world, and brave brands are the ones that go against the grain. And I think it's really changed. I think it's really evolved. And even the brands, I think we're going to have a really good discussion because the brands that we would probably previously call challengers or disruptors or someone going against the grain have probably now become the mass market brands.
Yeah.
What do you call a challenger brand, Mark? What's a disruptive or maverick or standout brand for you? And then we can maybe talk about
Well,
now.
disruption. I think disruption to me, as where it's used, I guess, is the most important thing now. Because before, I would say the term challenger brand or even disruptive brand, probably those coined phrases were started to come into play. What do you say? Less than 10 years ago. It's not something that was, certainly in the opening of my career, it wasn't something that was really spoken about. They were just brands launching, you had startup brands, and that was it. And startup brands had their approach, which is often to be try and challenge the category norms as they were getting into the market and what helps them with their shelf impact. But disruption, I'd argue it's a popular brand strategy for startups, challengers, and now even established brands looking to stand out in the crowded markets or crowded categories. I would say overall, just to sort of put a bracket around it, disruption is redefining what a category can mean to the consumer. I think that's where I would phrase it. What do you think, Liz?
Absolutely. Look, we spoke the other day in a podcast when we were chatting about brands and we spoke about French Connection. And I always think of that growing up as being the brand that challenged your perceptions. It was a little bit out there. Some of the language they used was edgy. And then I think about things like when I was at college writing things about violence in media. So there was extremes that were showed that would challenge what our everyday perception was. But because we've got so much social media, there's so much disruption now. We're bombarded with things that challenge our thinking, that some of the old ones, well, they're not that old, but things like I've got Brewdog, Oatly. When Oatly came out, I love those guys. They were doing something different. They were calling out the dairy industry and they were doing it in such a way that felt so authentic. But obviously now I just don't really see them as so breakthrough. I just see them as quite mass market. It's on every shelf, which was obviously their strategy to get them onto shelves by challenging our perceptions and looking outside the category and bringing that in. I even put Tesla down because I think Tesla at the time were like, wow, these guys are doing something different. Yeah. And now, we all have different perceptions and things like that. They're kind of just more consumer brands. They just started out as
those guys, though, Lee. Sorry to interrupt. And just before we sort of start listing some more examples, I think the difficulty with those guys is they were so good at their launch. So many other brands decided to sort of copy their approach, replicate their design effectively. And not only was it brands doing it, but retailers are doing it with their private labels. If you think about in the FMCG world, Oatly got replicated everywhere you went. So it probably had 2-3 years, maybe 2 years possibly, and then I remember there was other brands challenging Oatly to say Oatly had copied their brand approach and their brand essence, if you like, and feel. So a lot of these brands, the disruptive brands, they get replicated. Tesla, prime example. Maverick in his approach, Elon Musk, of approaching the electric car market, pushing all the boundaries. Now look at it. Every brand's doing it. Funny enough, the other day I was thinking about Dieselgate, which was a VW thing where they fiddled the system, if you like, to make sure that their diesel cars read the right CO2 emissions. But it meant that everyone was going against VW for what they were doing. They got fined, had lots of payouts, but it actually spurred on the electric car market, and Elon Musk jumped on the back of that, and that's when a lot of his new models were launched. Anyway,
interesting. So do you think, Mark, that disruptive means it has to be in the media or it has to be getting some attention, or it has to turn people's heads because that's the whole point of disruption? Or Maverick and disruption are actually quite different words. I know we called this the Maverick brand podcast, and then I was thinking about disruptive and how they are a bit different.
Yeah. I think it could be seen in lots of ways. Tone of voice, this is a weird one. Tone of voice in terms of how they market themselves visually and how they're heard. So it's tone of voice across the range. I don't know, what was your question, Liz? I've forgotten what the question was about. Talking about...
It was about, do you think that Maverick and disruptive brands were only disruptive because they're causing headlines or they're challenging what's out there? Do they have to be in the media? Do they have to be the ones, getting arrested or coming up? I mean, Oatly was the one that was the, oh wow, no cow, disrupting the dairy industry.
Yeah.
And then to your point, but then there were so many other brands that then started doing dairy, non-dairy milk, and they became less of a disruptor because people jumped on. Whatever you do that's new and different, people will copy you.
Yeah.
And once they start copying you, how do you keep being new and different?
Yeah.
So do you think you have to hit the headlines? Because Oatly did for quite a while. Brewdog, still occasionally, you have stuff like, oh, Brewdog have done this campaign. If they were just there, are they still disruptive?
I think it's moving now because there are so many brands looking to be disruptive, looking to shake up their category or their market. And I think you have to. It really is. You've got to grab the headlines because things are so short-lived now. Whilst you're in the headlines today, tomorrow you're forgotten because something else has come in front. So you have to be constant. Liquid Death, for example, in the US. That's a brand which was constantly getting in the headlines for very close to the bone stuff that it were, I think you could argue they risked a lot in many aspects. But simply put, it's water in a can. What is interesting about Liquid Death, though, I think, as a disruptive brand, as a challenger brand, and as a brand which was redefining its own category because it didn't really exist, is it didn't really translate to the UK. So whilst you have a disruptive brand in one region, US for example, bringing it across the UK, consumers didn't really get it. I don't know if they got it, but it wasn't really accepted as it was in the US. So interesting enough, I was just reading about Liquid Death pulled out of the US. Sorry, the UK's not pulled out, but probably pulled back its efforts in the UK marketing just because it wasn't really getting any traction or as much. It's still out there, and we still see it. But we see it as designers and as creators. We don't, as consumers, it's not really as popular as we're led to believe, and as we are designers.
That's really interesting. So maybe disruptive starts as being also quite culturally specific.
Definitely.
Which is because your tone of voice and everything that supports the brand personality probably can be quite culturally specific or quite niche to a certain market, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think of some other examples. There are challenger brands here in the UK which I know now are looking to broach other markets such as the US. One example, which I was going to leave an example for later of who's pushing the boundaries now, but is Trip. And I know I've mentioned it before. Trip are an established brand in the UK, and I don't know if they're in Australia yet. It's a CBD drink. That's how they launched themselves initially. Launched themselves at a point in the time where CBD was becoming quite a popular thing for people to use in muscle relaxants, as neurotropic type drinks or sort of foods. So using CBD in foods and drinks to help improve sports related things to a certain extent, or mental things. But in the UK, again, it became exceptionally popular. Used these mass marketing tools, which were quite, viral techniques, subscriptions, everything. They were trying everything basically as a small setup in London. That's what I'm, from my sort of basic knowledge. But now they're launching in the UK, it's launching in the US. And I believe they're sort of getting quite a bit of traction out there. But they established themselves here in the UK, set up their marketing platform, tried lots of things in the UK, and then launched across. So disruptive, I think they were in terms of their approach. And they were one of the first to do it in the UK with CBD drinks. Now they've extended their range. So it's not just CBD. They've got magnesium drinks, lion's mane, ashwagandha. I don't know how you pronounce it.
Well done, you do good.
All those ones that I can't pronounce. Trip is one example where I think that they served as a sort of disruptive brand. Now they are a standard brand. To the point which we're going to come on to later is, as an established brand, they're now being copied. So the brands that they're copying and replicating their approach. So a challenger brand is now becoming, their ethics and their approach is now becoming the category norm. Which is difficult because it means that particular brand now has to keep reinventing itself to keep above and beyond the competitors.
And do you think that's what consumers need or still want? Do you think because it established itself as a disruptive brand, or do you feel like consumers, once they've gone, okay, this is a brand, it's doing something different, it can almost be just keep doing what it's doing because it's got its category base, and then word of mouth becomes the thing, rather than it consistently being disruptive? Because I think there comes a point, once it becomes a mainstream brand, it becomes, and I wrote this down as a point to go, it becomes a bit inauthentic and a bit more of a performance.
I wouldn't say inauthentic. It does become part of it, often gets absorbed into a larger monopoly. Let's say, for example, another example I was thinking of was, I know we talk about non-alcoholic drinks a lot, Seedlip.
Yeah.
So Seedlip got launched in 2014, I think, and in 2019 got sort of bought on by Diageo. So whilst they're still quite a unique brand in their own right, as in they are a distilled, non-alcoholic distilled spirit, there are brands trying to replicate what they do, and they reinvent themselves a little bit. They tweak their design, but they're still in a category which is relatively new, so they're still seen as sort of breaking the mold a little bit. But yeah, I think brands do have to keep reinventing themselves, and even disruptive brands need to keep changing and sort of morphing. But that's the nature of our world right now, is things are so quick. As we said yesterday, people who doom scroll, they'll see something quickly and sort of register it today, and then tomorrow it's forgotten. And it's likewise with these brands. And you've got to keep, what can we do to keep at the top of their scrolling?
Yeah, and I did write down one of the points I noted was that Maverick used to be quite noisy, and I feel like it shifted from noise to nuance. So it's starting to tap into, and to your point, the person who's scrolling, you've got to connect emotionally, and you've got to find that one thing that someone can connect with, and that's how you draw people in. Some of these brands, even Oatly, found the niche market of at the time. There wasn't anything other that was plant-based milk-wise that was saying anti-dairy. So it's finding like that little tiny niche and that nuance of a person. To your CBD drinks, like there's a need for it. We don't always know there's a need for it, like the canned sustainable water. There's someone out there who wants it, but they don't know that they want it, or they don't know that it exists. So you see the need. People want water. They want to look cool. I love Liquid Death. It does exist here in Australia, but it's not as big as it is in the US. But they created a need. People they want to drink something that looks cool, might look like a beer can, but actually it's just sparkling water. It's also more sustainable than buying plastic bottled water. There's different need states they can draw into. I want to reduce my plastic. It's more sustainable, but I also want to drink something that's cool and it doesn't look like boring water. So I think they've tapped into two need states. And if they market that in the right, I mean, everyone's online now, so pick your channels. I think social and viral channels, rather than it used to be a big billboard with "oh wow, no cow" on, or we're all looking for it in different spaces. So I think Liquid Death might have not been culturally specific to different areas, but I think what they did was really stand out, and now it just exists in its own right. I think it's still got quite a niche market, and it's probably selling enough for it. And so some of the new brands that we're seeing, I'm trying to look at some of the brands that I actually pulled out. I didn't go as FMCG, but I talked about radical transparency. So it's about who gives a crap. Is an FMCG toilet paper brand, and it went against all of the plastic toilet paper brands. It's still doing really well, but you don't see it as much as you used to. You used to only be a direct-to-consumer online thing, and now you can buy it in supermarkets. But they're still consistently what they stand for. They don't have to be loud and proud anymore, because now we know that they exist, we know who they are, but we know they're the brand we buy when we want to be more sustainable. And it's commodity stuff, it's toilet paper. So cost-wise, to our discussion the other day, cost-wise has to be affordable. But I think if there's a purpose and a reason to believe, people will suck up a certain amount of cost.
Yeah, I think so too. I was also just looking at the list of other brands which who was disruptive, I think, and sort of who started out in that sort of that category. Like you had Brewdog written down. Monza Banking, and I don't know whether they're in the Australia yet, but they're an online banking platform. They were one of the first to sort of say, look, we are only going to be providing an online service, to the detriment of people like me who always did my banking via a desktop, for example. When I say online, mobile. That's what I mean, and mobile banking only. And I used to get frustrated because my joint account that we have, a family joint account, is on Monza, and I can't. I saying to Lorraine, I can't use it. Don't make me bank off my phone. I need to go on my desktop, a big screen, so I can see it and I can understand it, like a real old fuddy duddy. But I've now moved around to it, and I understand it, and it makes more sense to me to do everything. And as we all are, we're all moving to our mobiles. Monza banking, Deliveroo, food delivery, again, one of the first to be able to offering sort of, I mean, now they've expanded, but they've also lots of Me Too's out there too. So Uber Eats here in the UK, amongst many others. So they've spawned a lot of competition. Whilst you're in that sort of challenger stages, you want to be able to establish your consumer to the point where it's so extensive that even when competitors step on your toes, you've still got that sort of large market share. HelloFresh is another one. Oh, sorry, I'm just going through a massive list.
I was just thinking about, I didn't really think about the Deliveroo kind of stuff, but it made me think about how you have Uber as a brand. And then in Asia, they have Grab. And I see that as a challenger brand, not because it's competing with Uber, but it took on board all of the different cultural nuances and insights of an Asian market. There are a lot of gang-based things. And I actually met at a conference the guy who created it. Amazing guy. And he said, oh, we just found all of these challenges that in Asia, people just want to jump on a bike and go because it's not always easy to get a car. You can't get an Uber bike. So Grab has bikes that you can get on the back of as well. There are certain areas that taxi ranks hustle in, so they'd be run by gang members and drivers weren't safe to go there. So they've set all of these different protocols up that are culturally specific to Asia. And I see them as a challenger brand because they are challenging Uber, but they're doing it by going, we see what you do, but what we're doing is we're taking the learnings and we're making it relevant for a new market. So I still see it as a challenger. You can still challenge something that already exists in the same market just by learning and moving in a different way. Sorry to interrupt you, Mark. Keep going with your HelloFresh.
No. There aren't many more. HelloFresh is another one. Which are they in Australia? HelloFresh, sort of home cooking.
There's a lot of different versions of it. To your point, there's a lot of it started as HelloFresh, and then there are loads of iterations depending on what diet specific as well. Because there's people that are keto or all these different dietary needs. But no, HelloFresh.
Meal prep companies came to the forefront probably about 10 years ago again as well, where there were people setting themselves at home and providing athletes or whoever it might be with their sort of meal plans for the week or for the month, whatever, frozen. And off the back of, I think, HelloFresh, who were defining the market or defining the market back then. Your favourite as well, into the world of clothing, Gymshark. Gymshark is another one who set themselves up as basically allowing consumers to access gym clothing that looked good on them, that wasn't too bodybuilder specific. You used to get the old World Gym vest tops and stuff that most people think, I want to go to the gym, but I don't want to be wearing that weird stuff and baggy pants. That's the sort of thing I used to wear back in the day. So yeah, Gymshark is another one, but FMCG brands specifically, which is again more our world, the likes of Seedlip. I was trying to list some more before, and I came to a bit of a standstill. Do you have any more FMCG brands that you can think of?
I don't have as many old ones, but I was thinking about. Yeah, I've got more. So I was thinking about what does Maverick look like in 2025 and beyond. And so I was thinking about things like regenerative food brands. So there's brands like Notco and Upside Foods, where they're challenging systems. They're not just marketing everything that's, they're not just saying buy us, buy us.
Foods? What do you mean,
so they're foods that are, like ugly foods, or they use food waste to make it into something else. So there's a lot of those kind of food brands where they're not as, again, I think that's where it becomes about less shouty and more here we are and this is what we do. And so I've got those. Notco and Upside Foods were two of the ones there. I did put cultural disruptors, so Liquid Death was in there. And I found another one which was called Mischief, but it's spelled MSCHF. So it removes all of the vowels from the words. And it's an art collective brand mashup. So I had a look at their website today, and they've done things where they've commissioned people overseas to mash together the Birkin bag and a Dior bag and different designer bags to create a whole new AI version of a bag and then bake it.
Wow.
You'll have to have a look at it. It blew my mind. The website was very cool, but it did take me a few minutes to understand what it even was. So that one came up where they're disrupting culture through their category.
That makes a mockery of brand loyalty, doesn't it? If you've got brand loyalty within consumers and then suddenly they've got all their brands that they perhaps know of blended into one, I think that's a bit of an odd.
It did feel a little bit of a piss take of the big high-end brands that people buy into to challenge what are you buying, can we do a mashup of it. It was interesting. I needed to look into it more. The website had loads of different things you could span off. It was very artistic, and I was just fascinated actually by the whole brand experience. But that was definitely more like a shouty out there challenger brand. What else do I have on here? So I also had a look today. I did have Who Gives a Crap and Patagonia, obviously. are still not compromising on what they stood for originally. So I think they're still a challenger brand. They're just not loud because they still stand for what they did originally. And then I did just I found a brand today, and I think this is where it's interesting because I don't think that challenger brands are loud anymore. Some of them are quite boring until you found out what they are. So I think about tech brands. You spoke about fintech, and if you scroll back long enough through our episode history, can you remember when we did that episode about fintech? When it was not even, neobanks were only just on the cusp of breaking, and you and I did so much research to go, oh my goodness, like what is happening? And now they're everywhere. So it's interesting that, I think we might have mentioned Monzo back then, and so now it just seems an every day-to-day thing. But some of the tech challenges I think are interesting. There's a bank here called Up, and the branding of it's so cool. It's only online. It looks like a teenager's brand, but it's a bank, so it's challenging what banks are serious and mainstream. But I found this one today that was called Character AI. And I had a look at it, and it allows you to put in and build. You can create a character, you can give it a name, and then you can interact with a story to it. So you almost create your own story, and it writes it through AI writing it. So it's not that it's come from a book. And so there are different things like that happening that I feel are pop-up brands or challenger brands, because they're different ways to think. And I think AI will give us a lot more of that. But on the surface, they just seem really boring. It's like, oh, it's another AI thing allowing us to do something we can't do without it.
Do you think a brand can launch now without being termed as a challenger brand or a Maverick brand? And can you think of an example where
I think it's hard to be a challenger or Maverick brand. I just don't think we think about it like that anymore.
I'm just thinking you can have a brand that launches a range extension. On recent stuff I've worked on some Schwartz seasoning, so they might have a range extension, a flavor extension to their add to their portfolio. Now that's obviously not a rebrand. It's not all it is just extending the range. But to launch a new product, does it suddenly become that a new product now is a Maverick brand or a challenger brand, or is it just a new brand that's coming to the market? And then what makes it a challenger brand?
I guess it is still a challenger brand. Even today I saw the launch of the new design of Bourneville. Classic dark chocolate. Beautiful rebrand, great work by Bulletproof. But now they're doing dark chocolate with flavors. So that's going out to challenge, say, someone like a Lindt already has flavors.
Yes.
But that's still challenging something that exists, and it's going into, we've always been pure Bourneville, now it's got flavors. So I guess if you stripped it all the way down, it's still challenging what's out there.
Yeah.
There's so much choice now. I think my question with the challenger is like, what is it giving me other than just choice? Because I've got lots of choice and I don't always want more. So I think the real ones for me that stand out are something that's giving me something that doesn't already exist in another guise. I think Sorry, Mark. No, go on.
No, I was going to say, if you think about it from a brand's perspective, if you would bring out a new product to market, now we know more than anyone about what it takes to get a brand out there. And it's not just getting the pack to look lovely on shelf. You've got to support that with all your other channels, the social side. As we were talking the other day about sort of having an awesome collection of photography that could be then extended and used across all those different channels, making sure it's consistent, making sure it's aligned with your consumer expectations, and making sure that everything is brand aligned. So yeah, I don't know now how easy it is for brand to launch without it becoming wanting to be a challenger brand. Can a brand just be put out there in its normal form and in a new form and not be called a challenger brand?
And I think that is why some of the newer ones that are coming out do seem quite boring on the surface.
Yeah.
But some of the ones like your Trip or the more health focused ones, they've actually got some really educational storytelling that they can do. And for me, I think that makes a good brand. If someone's taking me on a journey and telling me a story, of which a lot of the health things or nerdy science or health stuff, that biotech and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think they've got some good stories to tell. Maybe you and I can tell people about opening your car door and having your tire pressures on the inside, and that becomes our story. But I think anything that unearths something you don't already know, I think that's where the more Maverick or challenger brands come into their own. I think they've got a story and they're starting to unravel it.
Yeah.
So that it makes you intrigued and it keeps you with them for a longer time, rather than it just being a pretty new version of something that already exists.
Yeah, you're right. It's talking and creating a need that consumers didn't know that they needed, I guess is what we're saying, and dressing it up in a way which means the consumer wants it.
Yeah, and I think, look, any brand, we know from working with brands for years, if you've got the right strategy on it, you can find that thing that isn't just what everyone else is selling, that's a consumer need and a want that really drives it, and then that becomes your point of difference. And there's so many things you can't find a point of difference, but you need to find the human emotion that you can tap into.
I was thinking earlier on as well about, and I think I mentioned it already, is brands that the challenger brand that's been out there for a while that then becomes the look and standard for the category norm. And I'm thinking Head and Shoulders, for example. They've always been that sort of anti-dandruff shampoo, which all the brand copies will say, well, we've got to replicate the bottle. And even when they go ahead and they change their bottle shape and label design, other brands that sort of in that category will then amend their designs to look more similar to Head and Shoulders, so they can keep with the sort of look and feel. Another example which I've been looking at recently, which has been really bugging me, because there's a hot sauce in the hot sauce category. I've been doing a lot with seasonings at the moment, seasoning brands. There's a brand called Hoi Fong, which is a toy brand. I'm sorry, I keep having to do that because they lose their curls, and I'm doing this. It's strangely addictive, and I've got to stop doing it.
I feel like it's
By the way,
inspired
for
by the
just
seasonings.
yeah, the seasonings. That's right. Oh, sorry, it's just me. I thought I was doing that without even knowing I was doing it. I'll talk about my moustache in a minute. So there's a brand called Hoi Fong sauce, which is a sriracha. How do you say that sauce? But it's you'll know it and you've seen it. It's a sort of sauce bottle, red. Well, it's a clear bottle, but you can see the red liquid within it. And it's a clear label, white print ink, and then it has a green cap on the top, sort of pouring cap. And there are so many brands out there that follow it.
Just Googled it, Mark. I've just
Yeah,
found
Hoi Fong, and you'll find there's other brands that look exactly the same. Flying Goose and Thai Dragon. Thai Dragon is a UK brand.
I'm impressed that I could spell the word sriracha for one.
Yeah, well, you probably had Google helping you.
Probably, that's the algorithm.
The idea that you launch a new product and within a couple of years, or in this case, I think it was a few years, but nonetheless, brands are copying what your look and feel, and it's an established look and feel. We've worked in this world before, where private labels would copy brands. That's just the way it was, and now it's a little bit different. That whole landscape's changed. But that's the world we used to work in, and I really feel for those brands that have been crafting their product to look amazing, and then people come along and just copy it.
Yeah.
And likewise for these Maverick brands, and it happens quite quickly now. You've got a brand that shows the one iota of success. Even some of the bigger brands will then copy the smaller brands and their look and feel. So as a Maverick brand, you really have to have something which you can lock in quickly, and make sure that you become known for that before someone else jumps on your own bandwagon.
Definitely in the FMCG world for sure. Totally agree.
Yeah. All right, Lise. If we
tell people, I think we should tell people about your moustache, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah, I've been growing my moustache across the summer. I had the twiddly bits. I don't know what they're called. Last year when I was doing my row, I don't know. I had no reason, just because I could. And it's getting towards the end of the summer here in the UK now, and I've got a cowboy. I don't know it's cowboys and Indians, but I'm going as a cowboy party. A friend of mine's got a ball at the end of September, so I've got a few weeks of this moustache, and then it'll be coming off. Because, might I add, anyone who's had a moustache or has a beard, sort of attempts to vaguely groom it, it's more effort to have a beard than not to have a beard. And likewise the moustache, all this sort of stuff, you're constantly trimming and waxing, so it is not something which it's not for the faint-hearted, and not for someone who's lazy. So you've got to keep on top of it. If not, regularly I'm like this, my spine's going the wrong way, so you've got to keep doing this, and it does look a bit odd.
It's a Maverick moustache.
It is. Anyway, on that note, Lise, I look forward to seeing your moustache next time we have a podcast.
I'll do that. It's like our November challenge for this year. Well, it would be Movember, so it would be kind of fitting, wouldn't it, if I could possibly manage to fashion one for our November session. Should we do a little sum up?
Yes.
I've got some fast facts about what I think Maverick is now compared to what it was before. So I've put down that Maverick is no longer a brand type, but it's a behavior. So I think it's how the brand turns up, how it shows up consistently, like we said with the not give a crap toilet paper or whatever. I think that real Mavericks are boring on the surface, which excites me because I talk about bravery doesn't have to be bold. And I think the small things that you make consistently are actually what makes a difference. So I think what makes you disruptive is your consistent amount of pushing your goal or your narrative. That Maverick has shifted from noise to nuance. We've already talked about that, about it being loud versus consistent. And again, I've just put maybe Maverick isn't about standing out, but standing up for something.
Yeah, like it. By contrast, aligning with what you've just said, is I've got, how is a Maverick brand achieved? Or how do you achieve that, the notion of being a Maverick brand? It's by being bold, audacious, and using striking visuals and provocative messaging. I think going back to what I've said before, and I've sort of just made it bold here, fundamentally Maverickism is about redefining what a category can mean.
What a great summary.
Bro.
I'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks ever so much, Lise. It's been brilliant. So we'll see you next time too.
Next time in the cowboy hat.
Yeah. Cheers, Lise. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mark. See ya.